How's it going, guys? Hyper here. As promised, delivering the 715 Frost DK guide. It will be going over the Breath of Sindragosa build, talents, stats, and the rotation I'm using, as well as some trinkets and legendaries you should be looking out for. It is very early on in the patch, so things might still change. People are experimenting. If anything new comes up, I will let you guys know as soon as I can. First thing we'll look at here is the talents. Now this whole talent tree is set up around Breath of Sindragosa. So in the first row you'll go Murderous Efficiency just for those extra runes, get more obliterates out, more runic power, higher uptime. Icy Talents, you can't really run it because you never Frost Strike and Shattering Strike is just not strong enough. Second row you go Horn of Winter, it's nice for the runic power and again the 2 runes, pretty short cooldown. Now once you get the 4 piece from Nighthold, Freezing Fog might become slightly better, but that's yet to be determined. Row 3, you go Hungering Rune Weapon, this is the default, especially if you have the legendary ring, it becomes very powerful. Now the next row, doesn't really matter what you take. If you need the AoE stun, Winter is Coming is great. If you just need some RNG procs on one target, Abomination's Might is the way to go. Now in the 75 row, I go Permafrost. For a few fights, it's worth going Volatile Shielding just to reflect some of that spell damage. It's a nice little extra that you can throw in there. And they also buffed White Walker, so there might be a few fights in the future where you might use it just to cheese some mechanics or survive through big damage. In the level 90 row, you go Gathering Storm. Now, there's still kind of a dispute going on between RA and Gathering Storm. I've tried out both, and Gathering Storm just feels stronger. The way they buffed it, if you're able to keep Remorseless Winter up and get those 10 stacks on Gathering Storm. In the last row, obviously, you go Breath of Sindragosa. Now, this is the default talent that I use for boss fights, and this is only good for boss fights where there's not a lot of movement. So I'm saying like Nithendra, Ursoc, things where you can have almost 100% uptime on the boss. This build is great. Now, if for fights where you lose uptime, you have to run out, do mechanics, you might want to go back to the original Obliteration build, which I'm just going to change into here. There we go. So this is the default build you would go back to, and it's still really strong. I tried it out the day 7.1.5 came out, and it was doing a lot of DPS. I was able to hold around 520, 530k single target if I had perfect uptime. Now, going back to this Breath of Sindragosa build, I hit the target dummy a few times just to see what it feels like, and I was able to burst like 1.1, 1.2 mil in crazy situations with some good procs. And I was able to keep it up for about a minute and 10 seconds on average. Now, some of them, based on procs, I might have gone like a minute 15, minute 20, and then for others it was only a minute or like 60 some seconds. But it was still pretty good, pretty consistent. Now, I do have the 2 legendaries. I have the Ring and the Bracers, which is not exactly ideal. The Ring helps out a lot, but the Bracers don't really do anything for this spec. They allow you to burst slightly higher, but they don't give you that consistency that the belt would with those extra runes. So if you have to choose and you have the Ring and the belt, hands down that's what I would go for. Second best option is probably the Ring and the Bracers, and then Ring and Helmet if you don't have the Bracers or the belt. Now, if you don't have the Ring, it's still possible to do very well with this spec, but keep in mind that you will lose about 20 seconds of uptime on that Breath of Sindragosa. For trinkets, it hasn't really changed much. You want to go for high level crit stat sticks, such as the one from Trial of Valor, or if you can get some Warforges from World Quest. So I'm talking like 880 or higher high level stat sticks. Other trinkets, the Eye of Command obviously is a very good one. Ursoc's Rending Paw, it's decent. It doesn't provide any stat boost to your Breath of Sindragosa. I would definitely recommend going with trinkets, Arcano Crystal, things like that, that actually give you some kind of stats. Now, since I do have a High Titan Forge, this is actually my best trinket. Nothing I can do about that. So, stat-wise, you should be aiming for about 20% haste. There's not really a soft cap for this, but if you go too low on haste, it does start feeling sluggish. You don't get those runes back in time, and then if you go too high on haste, then obviously you're missing out on crit and other stats. Around 30% crit is actually pretty good. From some of the top parses I saw, they were at about 10,000, 11,000 crit and 7,600 at least haste, or 7,500. And then versatility, they were around 1,000, mastery around 4 or 5,000. So then again, gems, you would go into straight crit if you have that 20% haste. If not, just try to get your haste up a little bit, no big deal. Now, the food or consumables, it actually changes because I think in every single situation, Potion of Prolonged Power is better because you will have that breath up for about a minute 20 seconds at most. And then once you get the 4-piece, it will be about a minute 30, a minute 40, maybe even more once you start getting better at it. But Potion of Prolonged Power will be up almost for the entire duration of breath, which is really beneficial. Food, I would use crit food, as I mentioned before, Frost Decays with the Obliteration spec. You would use the Fish Roll special because it does that little extra damage. But now crit food is obviously a little bit better because it actually buffs your overall damage and it has more benefits than it did before. Alright guys, I will show you my rotation real quick. So my opener is always the same. I pre-pot, Howling Blast, then Pillar of Frost, Remorseless Winter, then 2 Obliterates, then pop that Breath of Sindragosa, get Horn of Winter going, and then go into those Obliterates and Rhyme procs on the Howling Blast. Now, once everything procced, I just use my Dragon there and try to keep close to 100 runic power without overcapping too much. What I'm doing here is trying to extend the duration of Remorseless Winter as long as I can with those 10 stacks of Gathering Storm up. If I manage to extend it long enough, then it's actually going to come off cooldown and I will get to press it again before my 10 stacks fall off, which will just refresh it to 8 seconds. If you can do this long enough, it actually provides a pretty decent damage boost. From there, you just go into the little rotation of Horn of Winter, and then when you're low on runic power, you pop your Hungering Rune Weapon, and then when you're low, you pop Horn of Winter because it's off cooldown, and then your next Hungering Rune Weapon, and then your next Horn of Winter. You will get to use 3 Horn of Winters and 2 Hungering Rune Weapons, typically in 1 Breath of Sindragosa. Now, once you get the 4-piece from Nighthold and the Trinket, you will be able to extend it to about a minute 50, a minute 40, maybe even 2 minutes on some occasions if you get really lucky procs or you have really good management. But that about covers it for the rotation. After the breath falls off, you just go into a basic little rotation of Obliterates and Frost Strikes and you're using up your Rhyme procs with Howling Blast, just setting up for your next Breath of Sindragosa. Alright guys, that concludes my 715 Frost Decay Breath of Sindragosa guide. If you guys found this video useful, please hit that like button. Also consider subscribing if you would like to see more future content. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. I'll answer everyone. And if I find any new information, I'll keep an eye on Warcraft logs and things like that, and we'll let you guys know as soon as I can. Until next time, have a good one.